to actually write the book, I discovered step by step the immensity of the scope of the book. Initially, my idea was just to show that true altruism does exist, because there have been so many thinkers and even psychologists who said, no, there's always a selfish motive hidden somewhere deep behind. So that was one thing. The second point was that we all gifted with different levels of altruism, compassion, kindness, and that we could cultivate it. This is like a skill, it is not graven in stone. So that was the only initial goal. And that was inspired, of course, with my meetings with great psychologists like Daniel Batson, who spent his life, career, working on showing that the idea that everything is selfish is just doesn't not verify experimentally. And with Richard Davidson and Tanya Singer working on the emotion, positive emotion, loving kindness, compassion, the effect of meditation on the brain, all that. But then, as I went further in exploring the book, I say, oh, but how did altruism emerge? So what does evolution has to say? And I found that it was a major challenge for the theory of evolution to explain unselfish behavior. And then how they did explain it. It makes a lot of sense. And then I thought, well, do we have precursor of that in animals? And of course, things didn't come out of the blue. So then I had to immerse myself in the rise of empathy in animals, of mutual help, of all kinds of things, that wonderful thing that you do find in animals, because if you find them in human beings, you have to find them in animals. So that was the thing, and how it comes in children. And then suddenly I thought, well, people will say, what is this guy's daydreaming? He's thinking all the beautiful, positive things in life. What about genocide? What about psychopaths? What about narcissistic people? What about violence? So how does he address that? So I said, not to have this rosy image, I needed to show the contrary forces to the expansion of a more altruistic society. What are the forces that really makes a difficulty? And how do we come from a natural predisposition we find in the child to become extremely violent? What is the process? How we can counteract that process? So then I had to do a whole part on the origin of violence, on finding out that after all, war didn't always exist. It's really started 10,000 years ago when we started to become farmers and raise cattle and start to wage war and accumulate wealth. That there's a strong revulsion in human beings to kill, all these things. And then violence has diminished actually over 3-4 centuries, as many thinkers and like Steven Pinker have shown. So there was a whole, again, research going on. And then I thought, well, people will say, well, fine, you have altruism exists, you have violences and genocides are there, so the world is what it is. What do you do? So I had to think of then how we could bring a more altruistic society. So when do you look for? Education, economy, a more caring economics, a global governance that has local engagement and universal responsibility and global responsibility. And how do you deal with inequalities in the world? That was already another big thing. Then suddenly I thought, hey, why environment is such a challenge? Of course, it's future generations. So, of course, in the end, however complex scientifically and other it is, it comes down to altruism. Do you care or not for future generations? So it is a matter of altruism versus selfishness. So because of that, gradually the scope of the book expanded, because it shows how altruism is omnipresent in all our challenges and concerns, personal, societal, for the future generation. It's such a crucial, essential concept. And I discovered that in the process of writing the book, and that's why I spent 5 years and end up with having 1,600 scientific references, so that people say, hey, well, this mountain comes from Islam in the Himalayas. Now, what is it talking about? So I needed to ground that in solid science, and that's why it took so long. And it was a work of passion, but also very, very hard work.